Hi, guys. Hey, we're on second grade blue leveled reader. It is called From Trails to Highways by Stravis Diamondopoulos or Diamondopoulos, something like that. Forgive me for messing up his name. It's a difficult name to say. Oh, this one has some good text and graphic features, real photographs, map, captions. Today, people who want to go from New York to Boston can get in a car and drive there in about 4 hours. Nobody thinks of it as a remarkable accomplishment. But when New York and Boston were just towns in the American colonies, traveling was much slower and harder. A trip between these two cities took several days instead of a few hours. And then the caption said, "Today people travel on highways like this, but traveling was not always this easy or this fast." And that's why it has the speed limit thing on there. In the 1600s and 1700s, most American colonies had no roads or paths to connect them. If American Indians lived nearby, you might find a narrow walking trail. But such trails were not easy to follow. The early American colonists hardly went anywhere because travel was so difficult. The caption here for the map says, unlike the United States today, the early American colonies had only a few small towns and no roads to connect them. Ooh, here's a pic, and there's another pic. The early colonies had no complex system of roads. There was no need for highways because automobiles, trucks, and buses did not exist. These inventions would not be around for a long time. The fastest form of transportation in the colonies was a horse. Even if a colonist was in a hurry, he or she would not go much more than a few miles in an hour. The caption for the picture says, when early colonists went somewhere, they walked, or if they were lucky, rode a horse. And in this caption over here for this picture, you see, most early colonial towns were ports located on the Atlantic coast or on a big river. American colonists preferred to travel and move large amounts of cargo by water. For this reason, the towns that grew most quickly were the cities such as Boston or New York that were next to the ocean or big rivers. Ships took cargo and passengers all over the colonies. People also used small boats and canoes to travel on rivers and streams. As time passed, the colonial population grew, and so did American towns. More than 2,500 people lived in Philadelphia by 1701. Roads connected places within the town and connected Philadelphia to nearby farms. The early roads were nothing but dirt. Rain made them muddy and hard to walk or ride on. Later, surfaces composed of gravel helped to make roads easier to use. In this picture right here, it says that this is colonial Philadelphia. It shows you on the United States where that's located, and then this is like the map of their actual streets. Now, you remember when we did the parade, how streets and avenues go, like streets go one way and avenues go another, and you can kind of see how that all began. And then over here, this says there were many post roads in the colonies, and look at all those post roads. In 1654, a road connected Boston, Massachusetts, and Providence, Rhode Island. It was called the Common Road. Later, the road went all the way to New York, and people called it the Shore Road. Then it was called the Boston Post road. Now, if you remember correctly, post means travel, right? Because it's a post office and it's mail that's traveling. So they called it the post road because I'm guessing that the mail traveled on it. What do you think? It says it was called the Boston Post Road because people used to carry the post, the mail, from one city to the other. Today, local traffic still uses the post road. By the early 1700s, people could take stagecoaches between towns. It was better than horseback, but not much. The coaches had no springs, so passengers had a bumpy ride. Coaches were pretty slow, too. Stagecoaches made trips in stages. Coaches stopped each evening at inns where passengers stayed overnight. A stagecoach took 3 days to go from Boston to New York. It's interesting because I think this is the first time I realized that a stagecoach is called a stagecoach because it stops in stages. I love when I learn something new. Travel became easier in the late 1700s. A better designed stagecoach had springs that softened bumps in the roads. This coach, called the flying machine, could go faster than older coaches. As a result, it went from Boston to New York in only 2 days. By the early 1700s, people could travel along the Boston Post Road on a stagecoach like this. Hmm. This picture has a caption that says, "Wagons like this took pioneers westward in the 1700s and 1800s." And this caption over here says that modern turnpikes are updates of those used in colonial times. Hey, there's another new fact. Might be a trivia question. Carts drawn by horses or oxen carried cargo such as crops and manufactured goods in early colonial times. From the middle of the 1700s, there's that Conestoga wagon, became very popular. They got their name from the Conestoga Valley in Pennsylvania, where they were first used. They were so heavy it took 6 or 8 horses or oxen to pull them, but they could carry more than other wagons. And I love how we can make a text to text connection because when we read in previous stories, we read about the different types of wagons from long ago. Some colonists made money by building roads and making people pay to use them. They called these roads turnpikes. Wagons or coaches on a turnpike would find a pole or a pike blocking the way. They paid a toll or a sum of money, and then a worker turned the pike so it was not in the way. Today, there are modern turnpikes where drivers pay tolls. The tolls pay for road repair. Okay. Most of the roads described in this book were in the northern and middle colonies. In the south, the population was smaller and there were fewer towns. The southern colonies had fewer roads than the other colonies did. Virginia was the only southern colony where there was a much road building. And the caption says that the southern colonies did not have as many roads as the northern colonies. Today, the United States spreads across North America. There are national interstate highways, and every state has its own roads. Counties have networks of smaller streets. Almost all these roads, large or small, are well paved and smooth. Trips that once took days or even weeks to make now only take part of a day. The modern United States road system covers the whole nation with highways and smaller streets. America has changed a lot since the first colonists arrived hundreds of years ago. Colonists found no houses, stores, or other buildings, and no streets or cars or other vehicles. We need to remember that those colonists started with to appreciate what they were able to achieve. We kind of forget how easily things come to us now. When the electricity goes out because of a storm, we panic, freak out, and if you think about these times back then, they didn't even have electricity yet because that's something that was created by Benjamin Franklin. And so we have to remember to be grateful for what we do have because those are only came from people that kept trying a new idea over and over and over again until they got it. So, all right, grab your paper and get to work.